Hello, I'm Eric Odell with Continuous Testing Academy. I'm here with one of our instructors, Jeff Hughes. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks, Eric.
Great, and this is a special session, a QA session, on what we've been talking about in a couple of our tutorials about test data management. And Jeff, I wanted to just start off asking you a quick question in regard to how does an organization get started on compliance when it comes to their test data management practices?
Yeah, that's a good question. So every company has to evaluate where they're at in terms of compliance, what regulations they need to be concerned with and adhere to. But a good place to start as far as test data management goes is identifying where the sensitive data resides on your network. So you might have multiple databases that have that sensitive data residing in that area. That's the first thing that you need to do. You've got to be able to find the test data or find the sensitive data where it resides so that you can begin to be compliant.
All right. So is masking acceptable as a way to meet GDPR and data privacy regulations?
Yes, it actually is. Masking is a way to meet GDPR compliance. Within the regulation itself, it does say that if you are masking data, that is sufficient to meet the regulation. Now, I will point out, though, that security and compliance are two different things. So even though you might meet the regulation, that doesn't necessarily mean you have secure data. So again, keep that in mind. You can use masking, but there's alternatives to masking, such as synthetic data creation that we talk about in the tutorial, that really is a 100% sure way to be GDPR compliant.
Okay, now this question is very similar, but for our viewers who are using an LDAP tool, is this sufficient, in responding to GDPR and other data privacy regulations?
Yeah, well, using an LDAP tool is for access, and we recommend that you use some kind of LDAP tool for identity and access control. So once a user's authenticated to your network, the second question, or the second part of that, is having rights to access the data. So again, as a company, you need to take a look at what the tool is that you have. And is it sufficient to block access for just the testers that need access to that test data?
Okay, but is it really possible to achieve complete test data management?
Well, that's a good question. And again, that's up to each company. What is complete test data management for you as a company might mean something different than somebody else. Now, in the tutorial, we talk about the elements of complete test data management and continuous test data management. But for some companies, that may mean having a rock solid masking and subsetting process where they're doing that. For another company, it might be, well, we're going to use synthetic data generation entirely and we're not going to do any masking or subsetting. So for each company, they have to determine what is a complete test data management solution for them and their particular needs.
All right, now in context of test data management, what are some of the biggest hurdles that most organizations will have to overcome if they want to achieve continuous testing? And maybe you should talk a little bit just exactly where it fits.
Yeah, so there's a number of hurdles that companies have to look at when they're trying to achieve continuous test data management. For a lot of companies, it's where do they get the test data from? Where do they find it? And do they need to generate the test data manually, or what? That certainly is a big hurdle for companies that they have to overcome. Another hurdle is, how do we locate the test data? Where is it at right now in our production environments? Where does the sensitive data reside? And what are we going to do to mitigate the circumstances that we have when using that test data? It is a big challenge and a big hurdle for companies to be able to identify where that data resides, because if somebody doesn't want their data used in testing, we have to comply to that. GDPR says you have to comply to that. So, and most companies are striving to be GDPR compliant because they know that that regulation is going to touch them regardless. Now, to answer the second part of your question was, where does test data management fit in the overall continuous testing scenario? Basically, it's, if you're looking far left where you're creating test cases, where you're identifying, okay, what are the features of the application? We're going to create some test cases for that particular application. It's at that point where you want to identify what is the test data that we need to complete our testing. So it is After you do test case design, but prior to doing the actual testing, you'll want to identify the test data needs that you have for your particular application.
Okay, so what are some of the steps that organizations can take to achieve complete test data management?
Yeah, again, complete test data management really is, depends on you as a company what that goal looks like and what that means. However, there really are 3 steps. First of all, you have to be able to find the test data that you need, and companies struggle with that area. So number 1 is finding the test data. You've got to have a tool that can find the test data very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. Second is you have to format or manipulate that data for your particular needs. So having the ability to look at the data and see whether it's going to meet your particular needs. Having an automated tool to do that really is the best way to do that, where graphically, for example, you can see, oh, I've got test coverage here, but I've got some gaps over here, and we need to fill those gaps by generating additional test data. Then the third area is delivering the test data. How do we get the test data into the hands of the testers? The best way to do that is to have a portal, a self-service type of portal, where the data gets delivered automatically to the testers that need it. Now, if you can automate to whatever degree those 3 areas, then you're going to be well on your way to achieving what we call continuous test data management.
Well, Jeff, thank you very much for joining us on this special portion, the QA portion for Continuous Testing Academy, and thank you all for watching.